and welcome to the program. Today we'll be discussing Ukraine's visa policy and strategy with Ruslan Minich, a policy analyst with Europe Without Barriers think tank. During a recent conference, experts from the group outlined what they believe is a balance between the freedom of movement and national security in an effort to see Europe without barriers. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So just to start things off, I understand your group has been analyzing Ukraine's visa policy. So what's your assessment? How effective is it right now?
Our conclusion is that the visa policy, in a form that it is right now, practically is beneficial for, let's say, a rich foreigner that plan his trip about like half a year in advance, which is, in modern world, is practically nobody does, because everybody wants like spontaneous decisions. You want to travel
cheap airfare, for example, yeah.
So our idea was to find this, I would say, problematic things that we have, and how we can, as you said, balance and reconcile freedom of movement and security, because of course we understand that in modern war security is also a great deal, right?
It's a huge issue, I'm sure. So what did you find to be some of the areas where the system is lacking, sort of transparency perhaps, or any other sort of issues that you stumbled on?
Well, when we did the research, we found actually some positive things. Well, many positive things, but also many drawbacks as well. From the positive, I will start from the positive. For instance, we have such option as electronic visa or online visa for 52 countries. And I would say that this is the innovative thing, because even the EU does not have this possibility to have electronic visa. And the majority of people who were able to use this service, they were more or less satisfied and very satisfied. The only issue they had that they couldn't receive any feedback, because when you apply, you don't receive any automatic reply that your application is received. You do not receive any feedback when the visa will come, on the what stage the process is. And for this, for example, we have in Ukraine already the state migration service that apply chatbots, for example. Its solution, it does not involve human resources at all. So, and we advise, for example, for Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that they could apply this good practice already present.
But I feel like this is such a minor sort of detail. What about in the sort of broad scheme of things?
Well, this is 52 countries, so I think it's kind of good stuff. But yeah, of course, we have the major problem that is related to so-called migration risk countries. At the moment, we have 70 such kind of countries, and it's more than 52, of course. And the main problems, I would say, are related to these countries. Because, for instance, in Africa, for example, you don't have consular service or even embassy in every country. And the foreigners need to travel. So you should consider money for traveling, and you need to travel a few times even to apply for visa. Then you need to travel for the interview. The law envisioned that, for example, the interview can be conducted online, which is a good thing, right? But in practice, nobody does that online. Well, some countries do, but some countries doesn't. Malaysia, for example, does it only online, but other countries not. The other thing is that according to the laws, so legal system is better than its implementation. If a person already has Schengen visa or US visa or even Japanese visa, he or she can be exempted from this interview and do not need to spend money on traveling and, you know.
Right. So help me understand this. When, for example, someone from Europe wants to come to Ukraine, say someone in their mid to late 30s, somebody traveling here, but they're not quite sure for how long they'd be staying in the country for. how would you rate the process that they would have to go through, or perhaps that they would find themselves in once they arrive in Ukraine and say they want to stay more than the allotted or allowed number of days?
First of all, from the EU, we have visa-free regime for EU citizens. And of course, it's not a problem to come. There is a limited number of days, of course, to stay here. And the process to prolonging the stay is really complicated. But we didn't focus on this. And it depends who travels from the EU, because, I don't know, Chinese tourists, for example, or person from Africa. They like to travel. They can travel all over the EU. They may want to come to Ukraine, but they can't. They need visa. Already having Schengen visa, they need to make another visa for Ukraine, which is difficult for them. It's
another step that they would have to go through, another sort of bureaucratic process. So what's in the pipeline? What do you plan to do in order to make this more simple and in order to attract these tourists? Because when you have more tourists, they attract more revenue, and perhaps they might create a sort of attract others as well from their countries to come here, and this will boost Ukraine's image abroad as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the first thing is, of course, we need to streamline all these bureaucratic procedures and processes, which are, partly complicated, partly hard to understand. It's not 10-page application as for UK, but still you need to go through many things, especially if you from this migration risk countries. And the first thing would be to do that. And for instance, a really good idea is expressed by the Foreign Ministry right now, that they plan to introduce electronic consular so that you can apply for visa online, which saves a lot of money for people, time, efforts, and. Also, we have this idea right now. There is a trend that more people becoming digital nomads, and they like to travel, to live in some country for a year or two and work like freelancers or something like that. And they don't have this possibility in Ukraine, because you can come with short-term tourist visa only for 90 days, and, that's not enough. So we have this idea right now that maybe to study possible economic impact of these digital nomads on the economy. And Estonia is already doing that. They are thinking about introducing, the first country in the world that is thinking about introducing special visa types for digital nomads. And I think it might be a good idea for Ukraine too. Because
obviously they would be contributing to the economy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So tell me more about your sort of plan or your roadmap for balancing between keeping Ukraine open for tourism and yet keeping it secure.
Yeah, exactly. This is the point, actually, because this all bureaucratic procedures, they seem to be maybe contributing to the security, but often they are redundant. Think about if you have to apply for visa a few times and submit the same documents every time, or this redundant financial information that you should submit. Or, for instance, think about if you need to travel to Ukraine for 1 day, let's say for 1 day, you need to prove that you have about 270 euros for 1 day in Ukraine. I think it's too much. Even EU countries does not require that sum of money. In Germany, I think it's something like 45 euro, but not 270 euro. Well, if you travel for 10 days, then the sum is lower. Then for 1 day, you will need something like 63 euros, but it's still a lot.
So kind of getting rid of that financial...
That's true, yes.
Sort of financial threshold. Well, thank you so much for coming into our studio today. It was really interesting to chat with you about the visa policy.
Thank you.
That was Ruslan Minich, Policy Analyst, Europe Without Barriers think tank. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.